All right, YouTube, how you doing? Welcome back to the channel. Week number 15. We got the Saturday NFL games this week. Saturday and Sunday games to jump into in today's video, with the exception of the Sunday night football game. That's its own video here on the channel, so keep an eye out for that. But we got a bunch of games to dive into like we always do. I'm going to go through each and every one of these games. I'll give you my lean on the spread. We'll talk about the game. I'll give you my lean on the total. But make sure to keep an eye on the pinned comment of this video for my final plays when I'm actually rolling with myself, what counts towards our final record. You can ride with me, or you could fade me if you want. Those plays will be in the pinned comment. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button as well. And yeah, let's dive into game number one here. We got Cincinnati taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Now, these first three games are the Saturday games, FYI. The rest is obviously Sunday. But we got Cincinnati taking on Minnesota. Right now, Cincinnati sitting at 3.5-point favorites. I've seen a couple books go to 3, which is super important, obviously, in the world of football betting. We'll see if most books follow suit. But right now, consensus minus 3.5 at home. Total sitting at 40.5. I like Cincinnati in this spot, and I can't really tell if it's more of like me fading Minnesota or backing Cincinnati. Like, let's be honest, this Browning show hasn't been all that hideous, right? Like, this team has played okay under Jake Browning, so can't really knock him for, the way that he's been playing and this offense altogether. They scored 34 points in 2 weeks straight. And then on the other side, like I said, fading Minnesota makes sense. They pull Josh Dobbs, like maybe his story is now finished and written. Nick Mullins starting for them. I just don't think that they have a total identity, to be completely honest, and I don't necessarily see them as a threat to the Cincinnati team that's actually playing well. Now, what I will say is that this seems like a spot in which people might think it's a bounce back for Cincinnati, or Minnesota, excuse me, and blah, blah, blah. I could see that. When they were 3-point dogs, they've covered that in 9 of their last 10 games and in 8 straight. So it kind of makes sense. I get it. But I'm backing the team that looks better right now. I'm not buying into the oh, wow, well, maybe they found a better quarterback and sat Dobbs, and I don't want that right now, okay? So I'm looking at Cincinnati here, minus the 3.5. If we do pull the trigger on this, we're probably going to try and wait out one of those, threes, or maybe even just buy the half point if it comes down to crunch time, because that is such a crucial number in football. In terms of a total, yes, Minnesota's defense, I guess you can make the argument that it looked pretty good last week, allowing 0 points to the Rams, and the Rams go and score 60-plus points in Thursday Night Football. By the way, we went 2-1 in Thursday Night Football. We'll take it. But I don't think that this Minnesota defense has, proven itself to me, if that makes sense. Yes, they've had a decent season. Their last couple games, they've looked good. 12 points allowed to Chicago, 0 points allowed to the Raiders. But let's be honest, those offenses aren't all that great. I'm going to lean towards the over here, because you have a Cincinnati offense that somehow, some way is scoring points. And if they give you, 24 plus, this should be a spot where at least Minnesota can punch a couple and put some points on the board, because this Cincinnati pass rush is good, but the defense isn't spectacular, right? So I'm looking for an over here, but maybe a slight lean at the very most. It probably gets to 42, 43, 44 points in a sense. So I'll lean towards the over, but I definitely like Cincinnati minus 3 as my main pick in this video. Keep an eye on the pinned comment to see if we roll with that. Next up, we have Indianapolis taking on Pittsburgh. Right now, Indy, 1.5-point favorites at home. The total sitting at 42.5. Last time these two teams played was way back, or not way back, but a year ago. Pittsburgh won 24-17, and Pittsburgh has won 8 straight games against Indianapolis. Now, you can make the argument that Pittsburgh's been a lot better in the past than Indy at some points, right? But nonetheless, I do think that this could come down to, 1, Pittsburgh has their number, and 2, this spread says a lot. I don't think many people are high on Pittsburgh right now, especially after they allow 21 points, which feels like 100 points to the Patriots in their last game, right? This Pittsburgh defense that's really good got torched for all intents and purposes because of how bad that Patriots offense is. So do they come out a little fiery? I think so, because again, I think a lot of people are going to look at this and say, well, Pittsburgh's done, they're chalked. Tomlin seems like he's lost the locker room, whatever. Minshew's got some Minion fans and all that, and some people like to jump into Gardner Minshew's rabbit hole there, but I don't really buy into what Indy's working with, and I think this line, like I said, says a lot. The fact that it's only at minus 1.5, I think Vegas is telling us that this is going to be a close game, a hard-fought game, so I'm going to lean towards Pittsburgh here. Might even look at them on the money line for some plus money, because that plus 1.5 doesn't get the juices going as much, but in terms of a total, looking at 42.5, right? This is one that I think sticks to the under, because if it's going to be a close game, if Pittsburgh's going to, in my mind, have a chance to win this game, right, it's not going to be a shootout. It's going to be a low-scoring game. So if the game plan, unfolds like I think, then I do think that's going to be an under spot here, under 42.5. All right, Saturday Night Football. Feels kind of cool to say. Saturday Night Football, Detroit taking on Denver in this matchup right now. Detroit sitting at home as 4.5-point favorites. The total moving up. It opened at 46. It's all the way up to 48 right now. I've seen a lot of books at 47.5. So that seems right around the sweet spot that it will end at. But I'm going to lean towards Detroit here. I think that they're the better team. I think Denver obviously has looked fairly good, but on the road this year, Denver has not been that great of a team. They've been kind of a world beater when they're at home in terms of, that streak they went on and whatnot. They did start the year pretty poorly, but I'm gonna really factor in the fact that Detroit is has a 4-2 record at home here. They're coming off of a bad loss to Chicago, which we were on the right side of last week, one of the few that we were in the Sunday slate video, because that was not our forte. We've been crushing Thursday night, having a good Sunday night, having great Monday Night Footballs, and this video alone during the season so far has been like one of our tough spots. We're going like 50-50 every week, so hopefully that changes here with a lot of games and a lot to choose from. But nonetheless, back to this game. I think Detroit's a better team. I think they come out fired up after that loss against Chicago. They're coming back home here as well. So give me them minus the 4.5 points. I trust them a little bit more here than Denver, who, yes, I've backed Denver a couple times this year. But to me, it's like, were they just a flash in the pan for a little bit? Potentially. In terms of the total, 48 right now. It's a fairly low total for what we've looked at from what Detroit has, been allowing so far this year in terms of defense, right? Like they had a stretch, or actually they're still kind of on a stretch. 5 games in 5 weeks in a row now. 38 to the Chargers, 26 to the Bears, 29 to Green Bay, 28 to New Orleans, 28 to the Bears. Like these are not great offenses. They're allowing tons of points, right? So it's a little alarming to look at them and say, yeah, that defense is going to come through against a Denver team that has played pretty good in an offensive standpoint, right? Like they've been winning games. So I'm going to almost reluctantly lean towards the over. I could see this game being a crappy game, like 14-10 in a sense, or 17-10, right? But the numbers just aren't there for me to confidently back an under here. So I'm going to lean towards the over, but I doubt that becomes a final play, just FYI. All right, guys, before we get and move on to the Sunday games, I want to talk to you about Prize Picks. They have a new feature out right now, the Demons and the Goblins. What this is a pretty cool feature that they're implementing here, where green squares and red squares have different payout multipliers. Green may be easier lines for the players to hit, but you don't get paid out as much. Red, harder lines to hit, so a harder line to hit, obviously, and they end up paying more, which is kind of cool, because forever Prize Picks has followed a fixed payout structure, right? 2 for 2 is 3 times, blah, blah, blah. Like, now they're finally implementing some altered lines and altered odds, if you will. So make sure to check out Prize Picks, guys. That link is in the pinned comment. You get your first deposit completely matched, and there's no better time to do so. Go ahead and check this out. They also have a free Kevin Durant square out right now for Christmas NBA. So make sure to go check that out, guys. Link in the pinned comment. Let's go ahead and get back to these games. We got the Carolina-Atlanta game. I talked about this on Head to Head, guys. If you haven't checked that episode out, go check it out. Tassos is kicking my ass, but we battle through and keep the show going. The show must go on. But I like the under in this spot. Now, I bought a couple points in that one, and we'll probably do the same here, because I could see this getting to like 35, as a total number, but under 36 is going to be my lean in this spot. To be completely frank, I don't have much of a spread lean, but I don't think I'm going to remotely trust Carolina here. So though 3 points could be pretty pivotal for 2 bad teams, I'm going to lean towards Atlanta, but my favorite play in this game is probably going to be the under, just because of how bad these offenses are. Atlanta, obviously, probably a little bit more, not even probably, more explosive than Carolina, but man, they turn the ball over like crazy. I'm going to lean towards the under in this spot, but again, I want that at 36, so we may have to pay some juice, but that's kind of, my mind's made up there. I think that this could get to 35, and when you think about it, 35, that's allowing for 5 TDs and extra points, right? Like, I don't think these teams do that. So that's a really good buffer. I think that under 36 is a good spot for this game. All right, Cleveland taking on Chicago. This could be another crazy spot. In fact, we'll sound the psycho alert alarm. It worked for us last time we did it, but I think we're going to roll with Chicago plus the 3 points again for a couple different reasons here. This is supposed to be a very bad weather game. This is a Cleveland team that, yes, Joe Flacco's the quarterback now, and that's fine, you know, sort of nostalgic and whatnot. Is he elite? I get it, but this isn't really a Cleveland offense that I think is going to consistently be good. They dropped 31 against Jacksonville last week, but that Jacksonville defense has kind of struggled for a couple weeks now, so I'm kind of almost not giving that 31 as much credit as maybe I should. But either way, this is a Chicago team that had looked good last week, right? They've won 2 games in a row, 3 of their last 4. Maybe I'm jumping on them a little bit too much here, but give me Chicago plus the 3 points. They're a positive team against the spread this year, 6, 5, and 2. And if this was 2.5, yeah, I'd probably stick away from it, but we're looking at plus 3, huge number in football, as I already said in this video, and a team that, you know, has been looking all right. Like, they've won their last 2 games, but they're 3-point dogs in both those games, and they beat Minnesota, which, as we talked about, maybe shouldn't say too much, but then beating Detroit last week, 28-13, I'll take that. I think that is a pretty good look for them. The money's also on the Bears this week as well, which kind of, I like that. I like kind of going with the money in this spot because this Browns team, I'll give you that they're better, you know, 5-8 versus 8-5. The Browns obviously a better, I shouldn't even say obviously, but pretty obviously a better defense. But this line's only a field goal, right? So I think the weather, the way Chicago's been playing and reading this line kind of tells you that this is going to be a close game. So I'll take it. And kind of on that same note, 38 points, I don't see it getting up there. It's been crazy how low some of these totals have been this year and how little points we've seen in plenty of these NFL games. So 38's scary because, like, technically speaking, NFL teams should be able to do that, right? Like a 21-20 game catches an over here, but maybe not in the weather, maybe not with these two offenses. Give me the under 38 in this spot. All right, Green Bay taking on Tampa Bay here. We got the battle of the Bays. Green Bay is a team that still kind of perplexes me, if I'm being completely honest. Now, I think I know what this Tampa Bay team is, but this Green Bay defense, especially after that game against the Giants, which we were able to cash on Monday night, right? Like, that defense looked like it was absent, like literally not even there. That final drive, DeVito just goes down and it's like dink, dunk, dink, dunk, dink, dunk. They probably could have scored a touchdown if they wanted to. Tassis and I talked about that on H2H. So I'm gonna look at a spot here in which, you know, we kind of sussed it out on H2H. I don't mind the over in this spot because this Tampa Bay team, you could say what you want about their defense, but I think that the allure of how good that defense was has kind of faded off, right? In terms of what we're looking at this season, Tampa Bay has allowed a decent amount of points here. They're allowing over 20 points per game to opponents. That's still top half in the league, but again, if you look at it from a last 3 perspective, they're allowing 23.3, which is the 8th worst in the league. So it's like that defense is on the decline. We know Green Bay's defense is on the decline, and if DeVito looked good against Green Bay, you'd think Baker could look good against Green Bay. Mike Evans, Godwin, right? Like, Rachaad White should be able to play well. So I do like the spot here for an over as my main lean in this game. In terms of a spread, I'll lean towards the Bucks just because I think that they do have the weapons and that spread is at 3.5 right now. If this was 2.5 and inside a field goal, I'd probably lean towards Green Bay at home. So yeah, and you know, weather being cold and whatnot, like I think it's going to be sub 40 in Green Bay. Maybe Tampa Bay doesn't go with that. My favorite spot in this game is going to be the over, not necessarily the spread, but I think I'll take the field goal and change for this Tampa Bay team just because I can't trust that Green Bay defense whatsoever. All right, Tennessee taking on Houston. Now, CJ Stroud probably not going to play. Noah Brown, Nico Collins, like there's a lot of guys that are missing from this Houston lineup. But 3 points is 3 points, and there are some guys there. I mean, Davis Mills has had his run of, you know, looking fairly good and whatnot as well. So it's like, yeah, I kind of made a fool of myself on H2H at the end, if you guys didn't check that episode out, talking about this game, but I'm still sticking to my guns here. I think that Houston could potentially win this game. Like, why are we getting high on Tennessee after, you know, just because they won a game against the Dolphins, right? Like, this is still a pretty meh offense. Now, Derrick Henry, if he gets going, I've said it all year long, the minute he gets going, this team turns into a different animal. He's got going, and they've won 2 of their last 3 games. They scored 28 points in 2 straight games. I get all that. But I think there's a lot of value in Texas, in Houston, and the Texans this week. So I'm leaning in that direction. Call me crazy. We sound the cycle alert alarm. I get it. The total sitting at Right now, we're looking at a total of 37. From a perspective here, I think that this gets to 40. But again, it's gonna need some sort of Houston involvement. So hopefully that they can kind of step up. So I'll lean towards the over 37 here. All right, New Orleans taking on New York. I mean, as we get late in the NFL season too, like there's a bunch of games that obviously based on record and playoffs, like you can identify that are like, that game doesn't really get the juices flowing. It's kind of a crap game here, which you can make the argument this is one of those. I mean, not necessarily, but anything the Giants are involved in, I mean, I feel like, yes, they had the big win against Green Bay, but like this team doesn't have the oomph and the gusto behind it like people thought. But nonetheless, still worth covering this game because there's always an edge here, always implications, whether it's the future or even right now. So we're jumping into it. But New Orleans taking on New York here. Right now, New Orleans 6-point favorites. Not to say I was like truly inspired by the way that the Giants played against the Packers, because again, I think there was a lot more of a knock on the Packers than how the Giants played, but I did think that they looked fairly good, and I was like, okay, there might be something there. That being said, New Orleans kind of showed what they were able to do to a bad team last week, right? They played Carolina, they won 28-6 here. So I'm going to trust that they do something similar here. Derek Carr played. He had a couple plays where it's like, Derek Carr, what are you doing, dude? But you know what? Ultimately prevailed. He went 18 of 26, threw for 119 for 2 touchdowns. But again, Alvin Kamara had a couple late plays as well. And what was it? They had a long reception. I forget the guy's name, but they kind of stepped up when they needed to. So the stats may not look all that great, but 28-6 says a lot. Now it was against obviously the Panthers there, but I don't think that that's necessarily too crazy to think that the Giants could have a bunch of turnovers and X, Y, and Z against this team as well, right? So give me New Orleans here. I doubt that becomes a final play, -5.5. The total sitting at 39. Give me the under because I don't trust the offenses. Yes, I said that the Saints were able to make plays when they needed to, but not trustworthy, right? Like a lot of defense comes into that game against Carolina, obviously, too, and direct results of where that score ends up. So it's like, I don't think that they string, 2 high 28-point games together. And I don't necessarily think that the Giants go out there and run an efficient offense like they did in last week here when they scored 24 points. So I'll take the under 39 in this spot. All right, Miami taking on the Jets. So Mostert and Tyreek Hill are both listed as questionable right now at the time of recording. If they're good to go, I think Miami wins this game by 10 points. We obviously saw Miami kind of be able to say, okay, maybe we start the game slow on Black Friday, and then we'll come in and just demolish this team. They win 34-13, and they lose, right? They lose in prime time against Tennessee Monday night, losing 28-27. Like, they should be fired up. They should be pretty pissed. That's a decent deal, right? So I'll take Miami here -9.5 points. The total sitting at 37. I have to go with the over here. Like, this is a spot in which Miami, if healthy, could hit this pretty much by themselves. So seeing a total this low in a Miami spot, I think you gotta lean towards Miami, right? Like, this is a spot in which it's in Miami, 77 degrees and sunny. Like if Tyreek Hill and Mostert are playing, I don't hate the spread, the total here going over whatsoever. The one thing I'll say, and if you're a sports bettor, you get this, why is it so low, right? Like, why is it so low? New York's defense, maybe. The injuries, maybe. Miami's turnovers and what they looked like last week, maybe. It's a little questionable, right? So I get that side of things, but again, I don't think that you can, tip your nose at a total this low in a Miami game. All right, New England taking on Kansas City. Now, we know, or at least if you don't, I'm a Patriots fan. I watch more Patriots football than any football, and this team stinks. We should know that by now. But this Kansas City team is weirdly enough not playing well. I don't mind Kansas City's under for their team total this week as sort of a side bet here. In terms of a spread pick, yeah, the Patriots may keep this game close. Like as weird as that is to say, 8 points is a decent chunk. Like, that's more than a touchdown and an extra point. And this Kansas City team just hasn't really surprised me yet. Like, you can get them under 24.5 right now for -120 at the time of recording. Like, that seems pretty legit. So I'm going to lean towards Kansas City's under in team total, maybe in New England keeping it close. And then in terms of the total altogether, I have to lean towards the under altogether if I'm riding with those two picks as well, right? So keep an eye on the pinned comment to see what we end up rolling with. I doubt a Patriots +8 plays in the pin comment, just because it's like, it's easy to say something and lean towards the Patriots. It's a whole nother ball game to put your nuts on the table and say, I'm betting on the Patriots, because that has been an absolute disaster of a strategy this season. 3-10 against the spread. Yikes. All right, we got San Francisco taking on Arizona. Should be a quick one here in terms of breaking this game down. I think San Francisco is the easy look. That spread is decent. You know what I mean? Like, we're not talking about a 9.5 point spread here. We're talking about a 12 point spread. But 4 of their last 5 games, when San Francisco 12 spread or more, have covered that. Arizona's kind of dink and dunked around it, you know, covered, not covered, covered, not covered. But this San Francisco team is legit. We know that. We don't have to mention that much. And this Arizona team kind of stinks. So I'm going to lean towards San Francisco minus the points. The total sitting at 48 right now. I think that this is an under. I don't think Arizona really hangs with San Francisco all that much in this spot. So I'm going to lean towards the under 48. Rams taking on Washington. This Rams team favored by 6.5 at home. It makes sense why, right? But at the same time, like, you look at a Rams team that the defense just hasn't really been there. The offense looks like it's hitting its stride. I think that they have the pieces they need to beat this Washington team. It's going to be, it's going to come down to the fact that can we swallow the 6.5, which I guess at some point we're going to have to, because I definitely don't envision myself taking Washington plus the points. They've lost 3 straight games against the spread. They've lost 4 straight games overall. They've lost 8 of their last 10. Like, they're not looking too hot, right? The only teams that they've beat have been Atlanta and New England in their last 10. So it's like, this is a Rams side, but in terms of a final play conversation, do we really lay 6.5? We shall see. Keep an eye on the pin comment. The total sitting at 50.5 right now, which is the highest total on the board for the week. And I understand why, but I also don't understand why. Like, this would make sense to me if it was right around, say, 45, 46. So I'm going to pretty healthily lean towards the under in this spot. I could see this being a Rams 26 to, even a 18 type game or 20 game, right? Which is right around that spread, but still well under, 4 points under that total or so. So I'm going to lean towards the under here as well. And last but not least, probably the best game we have on the board here. Save the best for last. We got Dallas taking on Buffalo, and I don't really even need to look much further than that Buffalo line. Like, they are favored in this spot against Dallas here. A lot of books have it at -1.5, but that tells me everything I need to see. I'm leaning Buffalo here. Yes, obviously Dallas is one of the best teams in the league. They have a far better record than Buffalo, but this Dallas team, 3-3 on the road this year, right? 7-0 at home, but 3-3 on the road. Buffalo 5-1 at home, and coming off of a nice win against Kansas City. That was actually on the road, right? So I think that the spread's telling us all we need. Like, technically speaking, if you put everything in a vacuum, like, this should be a Dallas team that's favored, and they're not. So give me Buffalo minus the 1.5, where it is on most books here. Total sitting at 50 right now. These are 2 decent defenses, but I think, the offenses are also explosive. But I got to go with my gut here and just what, the game script is kind of telling me. If I think Buffalo wins this game, I think it's a low-scoring game, and they win, 22-19, something like that. So I'm going to lean towards the under 50 in this spot. I just think that this is a good spot for Buffalo. And in terms of weather, too, I think that that'll help out Buffalo here. It looks like there's a high chance of rain as well. So keep that in mind as you're taking, looking at these over. So give me the under in this spot. And, guys, it's going to wrap for today's video. Recording earlier than normal because of the Saturday games, but it's kind of cool to have some Saturday football. So yeah, guys, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. We'll catch you guys in the next one. All right, peace out.